Well, thank you, and good afternoon to all of you, and thank you to Susie and Nancy for allowing me to be here on this stage, but also for having me here for the first time in this meeting. Well, I've always been to these boring, meeting of researchers and so on. First time I could dance in a meeting. No, going back. I go back to my first slide. Back. You are sitting already 30 seconds. May I have the first slide?
That was the first slide.
Yeah. I can see it here, but it's not there. Good. I'm here to reframe the first 1,000 days of life paradigm, which also means that the prevention of chronic diseases, of non-communicable diseases, of which we heard so much by Dr. Carmona this morning, begins with the beginning of human life. This is something extremely important. It's important because the first thing I want to tell you today is that prevention begins before conception. And this is something that we have to keep in mind because it's something that we have been knowing for a long time. However, we have never been using it. And I think that the wellness world should take advantage of this. 1,000 days. What do you mean? Well, from the moment of conception to the second year of life. Traditionally, and it's more than 20 years we speak about it, we refer to nutrition. Nutrition of the mother, nutrition to the fetus, nutrition of the baby, blah, 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 all these things. But nutrition is just one of the many characteristics. Obviously, one important thing is that the scientific knowledge and the technologies we have today allow us to develop a process which is really innovative. Because it's integrating the clinical evaluation, which is obvious, but the molecular evaluation. At this meeting, you'll be hearing or have already heard about epigenetics, about telomeres. You heard this morning fantastic lectures about these things. Okay, but on top of that, you can have also the exposome evaluation, which means what the environment is doing to you, you're exposed to. But of course, you have to put into that also the educational part, which is most important, and with it, the empowerment of people. Because if we do not empower people, people don't get the knowledge, and so they don't know what to do. And so it's just there. And then, obviously, the monitoring through the wearables. Yesterday, it was one of those things, and you had almost the whole suit, which wasn't a wearable. And you can monitor. But this means that this is a multidisciplinary approach. And also, it means that we have to go on. Because we have to study this, and we are studying, I'm studying this. I'm conducting a study with many experts in the world, trying to see what we can know more about this. So with samples that are pregnancy-related, and they come also from the parents and from the children. But what is most important is that once we have this, and once we know the data, then we have to bring it, translate it to the people for that empowerment. Well, if you want to look at the lifetime, the 1,000 days in the lifetime, well, it's so simple. The 1,000 days are here, okay? And that is the best moment in which you can interact with a person, the new person. because the plasticity is highest. Plasticity of all organs, of course, but of the brain, for instance, in particular. You heard this morning talking about neurodevelopment, neurogenesis, all of this. Yes, because we know that the gray and the white matter, well, they're made mainly in the first year of life. So what happens in that period of life is extremely important. I'm not saying that it's not important what happens afterwards. We've heard today so many times. You have to exercise, you have to do all these things. Fine. But that is later on. So if you interact immediately, then you can have the low-risk trajectory, which is down there. And you're not going to the high-risk trajectory if you start later. But obviously, there is one thing that you have to keep in mind, that at any time of your life, there is always some room for plasticity so that you can do whatever you are allowed to do and you should do, even the exercise we did 10 minutes ago. But what is important is that we have also the preconception. And the preconception is extremely important. Why? Well, because, it's the moment in which people decide or not decide to have a baby. And this can last even 20 years, but can last only 20 minutes. You never know when this is going to happen. However, there is one thing that we know, and it's that the spermatozoa lasts 90 days. And in those 90 days, yes, 90 days, I assure you, in those 90 days, they don't last outside, inside, okay? In those 90 days, lots of things can happen. And it's what we call the epigenetic force of the environment. And today we have to use the good semantics for environment, because environment means lots of things. It means the lifestyles, the habits, and so on, but also means what we call the stressor, the social stressors. Even the WHO said there are 15 social stressors. What do we mean by stressors? We mean the life we live in the family, the life we live with our partner, the life we live with our children, the life we live in the place we work. And that could be stressful. And the stress is one of the most important ingredients, let's say, of the bad epigenetic part. Okay, so the news is that the first 1,000 days of human development, including preconception, accounts for 70%, 70% of your future health and wellness. Then, of course, you can always make it up. You will hear tomorrow about telomeres. And today you have heard, you can build them up again if they go down. But it's always something that you have to catch up. And it's not something that you're making or are preserving. Okay? Well, you know all these things. You know very well that the aging population means chronic disease rise. In the world today, there are about 13% of people over 60. And there will be 21% by the year 2050. But in my country, Italy, 21% is now the population over 65. So we are dealing, with this problem of chronic diseases. Because the chronic diseases worldwide are not the ones here in the United States and in Europe. Cancer is much more. And look how it goes, projected. Look at ischemic heart disease. Look at cerebral vascular disease, for instance. Think of dementia. 50 million people today are with dementia. 130 million people will be by the year 2050 if we go on. So I'm so happy to be here the day that it was launched, I think, the moonshot to wellness. Because it means a world free of preventable diseases. That's what we are trying to do. But what is the cause? If we wanted to explain this to a child, what we say is that the cause is inflammation. Then, of course, you can say chronic inflammation. You can say altered immune functions. You can say oxidative stress, tissue damage, all of this. But that is the cause. And the cause of this is what? Well, the modern lifestyle, diets, microbial patterns, physical exercise, and all of the health stresses, including the chemical ones, pollutants and pesticides, including non-chemical stresses, the ones I told you in the family and at work. And all of this is a multi-system, of course, and it's a multi-system effect, which means also an increased non-communicable diseases risk. And the most effective anti-inflammatory medicine is your word, our word, the wellness word. No doubt about this. It's not a drug. There are lots of drugs, anti-inflammatory drugs, but this is the best drug. But only 5% of the population is on that side, where you have awareness, education, growth, and so on, and you can go up to the high level of wellness. While 52%, the majority of the world population, is on the other side. Is on the side of illness, of sickness, is on the side of premature death. Well, if we wanted to make a sentence, we can say that wellness educates for healthy lifestyles and promotes prevention. No doubt. But this means that even if it is a business, yours, must be an ethical business. And it is an ethical business if we do this. Well, if we take a look at the whole life, and if we take a look actually at the chronic disease prevention in the life course approach, and we go from preconception to older age, well, the interception of the preventable risk of the line goes like that, which is obvious. Okay? So the most we can do is in the preconception and in the fetal life, and obviously also in the infancy and childhood. I'm so happy to hear about what you're doing about childhood. No one ever speaks about that. Well, I borrowed this slide from an important journal, Nature, which for us is probably the most important journal, to show you that in response, in this case, is to exercise and proper nutrition, but could be to any other of the lifestyles and habits, the epigenome of gametes, that is what happens to the genes because of the environment, and here the spermatozoa you can see, but also the ovum, is remodeled. And the epigenetic changes will affect the developmental programming of the embryo. And in utero, the developing embryo is then susceptible also to the influences from the mother. But these influences can potentiate or can suppress the signals that come from the gametes, from the spermatozoa or the ovum. So it's not a simple thing. You have to have a good preconception, you have to have a good pregnancy, and doing wellness things during pregnancy too. Otherwise, it may suppress. And both psychological stress, high-fat diet, for instance, perturb the sperm non-coding RNAs. I'm sorry to use the term, but I am a scientist, I don't know what else to say. That results in disorders to the subsequent progeny. It is possible that both the paternal and the maternal obesity contribute to the inheritance of metabolic syndrome in the offsprings. And that preconceptional and also the gestational during pregnancy, maternal exercise, diet, and sleep, meditation, all of that, are an effective therapeutic strategy to prevent the dysfunctional epigenetic programming. There is an example. Obese fathers could transmit epigenetic markers on genes that regulate brain development, appetite control, predisposing them, the offsprings, to obesity. So there is a need for tailored maternal and paternal preconceptional and gestational wellness programs to combat the expanding burden of lifestyle-related chronic diseases. And the wellness world must be prepared and ready for this. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for health and wellness, but it's a fantastic business opportunity also. Does this go on to first, second, and third generation? What we call the transgenerational? Yes, it may. In animals, yes. In humans, it's highly possible. And this is important. Why? Because what we know and what we call the epigenetic inheritance can be translated into this sentence, that the wellness lifestyles, today we especially know the exercise, have the potential to modify the epigenome of human reproductive cells and could have an unprecedented effect on the health of future generations, thus influencing offspring health and disease risk. And I think that this is extremely important. So, having said this, and having to wrap up, what I can say is that the dimension of health and wellness is all of this. You have already seen this in a different way, but this morning it was almost the same slide, showing the physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, social, intellectual part. And what I would like to say is that health and wellness are a multi-dimensional, entangled universe. This is important. It's important because it's the first time, really, that after 1948, when WHO was formed in April 1948, it said the word wellness. Then forgot it until 1985. But now it's there. And the two worlds have to meet. Well, the take-home messages, therefore, are that sound scientific evidence proves that wellness plays a key role in population health in synergy with the traditional medical paradigm. But when you meet, you don't have just to chat. You have also to agree. The second part is that children's wellness represents a critical period to prevent NCDs, preconception and first 1,000 days. Children are all born equal, but if the father and the mother behave in a certain way, they may be different. And finally, the third one, before the music starts, is that health and wellness professionals should promote and apply the educational role of wellness for primary and secondary prevention in shaping the new prevention paradigm and ensure the sustainability of the healthcare systems, as we heard this morning from your former Surgeon General of the United States. Thank you very much.